Welcome to Fandom and Wellness,
a podcast about the complex relationship between fandom and mental health.
Disclaimer, we are not psychiatrists or psychologists. We are just fangirls with a vested interest in mental health. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Jenny. Arkita won't be joining us today, but we do have a special guest, Taylor Deatherage.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it a lot.
Oh, I know. Thank you for asking me to be on this. This is great.
So before we start, can you just share your pronouns?
Absolutely. Mine are she, her, hers.
Great. Ours are also she, her, hers. And I just wanted to explain how I know you to the audience. I barely remember, but it's like a slow burn, you know?
Yeah.
Like you slowly grow to know people. We're just in the same, like, geek girl boss circles.
Yep.
Yeah, right? Same with Danielle, right?
Introduced on, like, in a Geek Girl Boss Instagram thread.
Right. Yeah. I think, that was the first time I met you, Taylor. And then we met at conventions, and I found out you were into RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah.
And
Super proud fan. So proud.
Yeah. I don't know many people in my real life who actually like that show, so It's nice to see other people. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Other than my younger sister, who I go to a ton of events with. And I found out used to read and write fanfiction for a while.
I still do.
Still do.
Proud to say. I also have I've authored works that are anthology pieces for Doctor Who, published Doctor Who books.
Oh, really?
As well. So not just fan fiction, but yeah, most of it is.
But that's actually awesome. I didn't know that.
Thanks.
That's
yeah, it's
so
like
cool.
a hidden. It's like a secret. Not really a secret, but it's like something I never tell people because it never comes up. Yeah.
Well, now they'll know.
Now people will know. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Can you share with listeners what you do for a living?
Yes. So I do several things, which kind of overlap.
Oh my god,
with
so
each
many
other.
things.
Yeah.
One of my primary full-time job is I work for a company called Alien Entertainment, and we've been around for 20 years. We're a retail online business, but we do a lot of work. We do a lot of like licensed items. We've done exclusives with companies before, and I do social media management and event management for that company because we run the second largest doctor convention in the world and the biggest in the Midwest, and it's called Chicago TARDIS. And I do event planning and marketing for that. And I also partial owner and designer, and I run our social media for my side business with my partner called Logan Arch. And that's also very pop culture oriented.
Sweet.
How long have you been doing Chicago TARDIS?
Chicago TARDIS this year will be the 6th year, and I've been working for Alien for 6.5 years.
And how long
Nice.
have you been doing Logan Arch?
That's gonna be 3. It'll be 3 very soon.
Cool. Time flies
It does.
when you own a small business.
I just saw like a Facebook time hop post that was talking about like when I first started making the convertible dresses 6 years ago. And I was like,
Wow.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like I started my company in 2011, but I switched to doing the convertible dresses like 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh geez.
And when you say you're like... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just congratulating Danielle. Like, what a road for you.
That's...
Yeah.
What a road for all of us. All three of
There you
us
go.
are geeky business owners.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you say like, you're a social media manager and an event planner, I feel like that doesn't really convey all the work you do planning a giant convention and handling all the social media and going to other conventions for Alien Entertainment. Like, there's so much that you do.
Thank you. I think that sometimes, and then I think, oh, this is just what you do when you're like a one-person team doing this, which is funny because, you know, some people have like marketing teams, which we kind of do when we do the event. Like, when the event is happening, I have people that go out into the real event and they take, you know, photos and things for me, and then I sit down and I aggregate it and do whatever. But, yeah, I would say that's true. I'm going to say true. But I try not to think of it like that. I do enjoy what I do, so that's helpful.
That's good, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to you about how we were walking around at a convention and how you don't always feel like you're taken seriously as like a woman boss because you have to have your husband do some of the talking sometimes to be taken seriously. Which I thought was so...
That's a bummer.
Yeah, so interesting, was so sad.
Yeah, you come off as super professional, honestly.
Thank you. We'll probably talk about this in a while, but my first career was extremely professional. So I have carried that kind of mentality, I think, over to this business. I don't really know how not to be this way, I suppose.
Okay.
But yeah. There are certain things, because the pop culture industry of old is still very, oriented in, you know, patriarchal and masculine, ideals. Unfortunately, we're getting there. There's been a lot of change even when I entered this business 6 years ago. But because of that, I definitely do have to have my husband go like, hey, why don't you send an email to this person? Or I have pretended I was a man in emails before because my name it can be a man's name as well. And some people do mistake me in emails for a man. Yeah. And I just let it go. Yeah.
Oh, man.
If that's going to get me to, you know, be able to talk to this person, unfortunately.
Do you feel like that has an impact on your confidence?
Maybe. It's more like, this is dumb.
Yeah. True.
That's me. At the end of the day, it's more about like, this is ridiculous and gross.
Right.
And how I get mad about that and how I do want to fix those kind of attitudes rather than, I'm more of an action person than I am a stewing over emotions person.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's obvious by a lot of your posts.
Thank you.
I appreciate that about them. So
thank you.
Yeah. I was just reading through my old emails because I have to delete my emails every 5 days because it's 99% full and I just, but I need all of them is the problem. But anyway, I was just looking at how people would talk to me and Rose versus Mark a lot of the time. They'll call us girls, for example, you know, even though you shouldn't, but, you know, we're in a professional setting. We're professional emails, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very frustrating.
Yeah.
And so, Logan Arch is 3 years in the making, right?
Yeah, almost, yeah.
Almost.
Do
you find it difficult to handle that, like, basically in your off hours? When you might want free time, basically?
Yes and no. I will say, I don't know what free time is. No, I'm just kidding.
Bitch, me too.
No, you're not.
No, not really. My hobbies before this, so one of the things I used to love doing was making things, right? I do cosplay, and that's still a hobby I love doing even now. But before that, I was a crafter, and I've always liked to make things with my hands and design things. And when I had the opportunity to make something bigger out of that because I had, you know, the financial means and I had found, you know, places I could get these things made, such and such, the way you roll out kind of, you know, your side hustle or whatever. Right. At the end of the day, that hobby that I had became something that I was doing anyway. So I guess it's sort of like
that makes sense.
A mixed answer that I love doing it because it used to be my hobby, so it doesn't really feel like a chore. But yeah, there are some times where I think, oh, I wish I had more time to devote to this. Yes, that I will say.
Right. Do you how do you handle if you feel like talking about this and like anxiety and depression when you're juggling all of these responsibilities?
I will say that, first of all, I'm very frank about mental health. So anybody, and again, we're going to probably get to why that would be. But
yeah, I think that's something you and I have bonded over.
That's true. Because there are some people that almost get there when they're like going to speak about it and then they don't quite get there. And I'm like, okay, don't push yourself if that's not where you want to go, right? But I'm never going to be not super frank about it because I think there isn't a point. And I'm fortunate enough the way that I have learned how to, in my education, how to properly, step aside and say, okay, let me think about these things. That's part of it. It's also good because sometimes people can't actually talk about it, and if someone can, maybe that's good for everybody. I don't know. But it's not awful because I have good outlets and I have a great partner. That's, first of all, that's it in the first place. Like, good friends, good partner. I have cats, which are helpful.
Okay.
And I think it's challenging in certain pieces because there's things like imposter syndrome that creeps up on you, right? I think I did the panel at San Diego Comic-Con. One of the things that I said just blatantly to people was, like, comparison is the thief of joy. Don't do that. And I will say that to everybody forever because it's the truth. Your brain is going to tell you that that's not the truth, but it's the truth. It really is. So we
but
can't
do you find that you do it anyway?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because we're all human. We can't mean to not, like, reality check what's happening in front of us, because that's not necessarily the norm. You're not going to go to a situation and go, okay, let me logically break this down and why my emotional reaction isn't appropriate. That's something you have to, like, think about and, make yourself understand. But it's perfectly fine to have those emotions as well, because that says something about you, that maybe there's things going on that you should need to take care of yourself. Like, self-care needs to happen in those moments and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So good partner, good friends, good outlets.
Yeah, I know Jenny and I are just like little balls of anxiety all the time, so.
Sorry.
Good times. Well, we'll talk about what I really want to talk about is healthy escapism, and we'll get there.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah, but I also wanted to just you hinted at this earlier because you used to be a social worker.
I did. Right? That's correct. Yes.
So what did you do as a social worker?
Well, when I went into social work, I actually wanted to be a medical social worker. And part of that is because, again, I'll blatantly share this, which is fair. My dad is he's disabled. He has an autoimmune disorder. And so growing up, seeing him interact with all these medical professionals and how they were, like, very awful. And it's fine. He's okay. He's like, if you ever meet my father, he's one of the nicest people in the world. He's like a huge nerd, too, which is why I'm a nerd. So he's an awesome dude. But they're just not equipped to talk to people sometimes. And so that's what a medical social worker does. They come into situations, they talk to the family, they're advocates. And so I wanted to do that. And then I went into school, did an internship at a agency in Chicago, because that's where I'm from. And I was just blown away by how they worked, and I stuck with them. So I worked with children in a school setting, and the agency is called Youth Guidance, and they are the oldest social work agency in Chicago to date.
That's awesome.
Yeah. They're private, though, which is actually a good thing. So it's not the situation where, like you would normally have someone who's solely in a school. It's like a program situation. So I also designed programs for the school. So what I would do, I would get a budget from the higher ups at my work, and then they would ask, what do we want to do with these kids for this summer or Christmas break? And I design the programs around that. So we do classes, we do field trips to places, we do that. So that's actually where I first got my event planning experience as well, because I had to do all that stuff and then figure out how to build this program when they, they handed me a check for like a few $1,000s, like build a whole program for a year off of this, Yeah, that's what I used to do. And I worked with families and things like that. But yes, primary, my work was with like preschool age kids to 8th graders. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss that work?
I do. I will say I miss it sometimes. I don't miss the bad parts. I won't go into that because that's it's depressing. The bad stuff's depressing. But the good things, like talking to the families, being involved in the community, because we also did things like our food pantry over in the neighborhood I worked in, at the school, because it was like the primary a CPS school in the neighborhood. And we used to do like street fairs and everything that you would communicate. I knew everybody that lived around the school, everybody that came to the school. So yeah, that community aspect, I definitely miss that sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, sounds like you're really helping people.
Yeah.
I think I did. It's funny.
It sounds like you did.
Never when I think about that. It's only just like what the kind of involvement you have, and what kind of thing we were building as a group. I guess that's the kind of stuff that I always thought about, because it was very group oriented. It was never me just working by myself. I had two other girls, women who were they were with me in our like administration piece. So we would I would have a specific task and we would do this, but then they would, aid me in doing certain things. Right. And then we had like staff under us who would work with the groups of kids doing these like tasks or like their classes, and we get teachers from outside the school to teach the classes. So it was like a huge group effort. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And obviously there's like policy and like really big planning that goes into creating programs for a whole city.
Yes.
But like the people on the ground, like impacting directly the lives of children is also extremely important. Right?
Yeah. I think so. I absolutely think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did mention that your training as a social worker kind of impacts how you act now. But how would you say it does that?
This is a funny question, because maybe people will start to notice this when I talk to them, but don't worry about it. I always am afraid I'm going to scare somebody with this answer. It's more about like looking at someone and understanding them, which seems like a simple and silly answer, but it really is that. I don't think... So I do some freelance work, let me preface this, in marketing now. So I do social media freelance work. And one of the things I think I bring to that sort of field is that I am able to sit down with someone and consult with them in a way that I would I have been taught how to consult with someone and hear them in like a social work setting.
Sure.
And for lots of people that can be beneficial, because there's things that they are wanting and you're hearing it, and then you got to pull it out. So you got to be like, I'm hearing you say this. What do you think about this? Again, just conversations that we have one-on-one with people. And that's probably the thing I carry over the most, that like actually looking somebody in the face and understanding where they are now and where they want to go, and thinking about those kinds of things. And I do that a lot with people.
I think it's very obvious that you do that.
Oh,
personally.
Good.
Like when I said that I think you come off as very professional, like that was like a very short form of me saying all of that. you make like very direct eye contact, and you seem very empathetic towards what other people's needs are, but also give like a direct response. And yeah, I don't know. I think it comes off already. I don't think you should be worried about scaring people about it.
It just means that you're a good listener, that you are actually hearing what other people are saying.
Right.
As opposed to being like, okay, say your thing, and then let me say my thing that I think is more important. You know what I mean? So I think it's definitely a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that.
Well, it's not obvious to me that you're actively listening because, like, you are, like, it's, like, deeply important to you to actually help other people.
Yeah, I would say that that's never going to go, that kind of motivation in me is never going to go away because it's, like, hardwired into me at this point. Yeah. So, I appreciate that, though.
Yeah. And I think it's a good mindset to come at other people like you want to understand them and what their motives and why they do the things they do.
Yes.
Right? Because they can act in a way that seems detrimental to you but like there's a reason for the things that they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's a good mindset to have for sure.
Mm-hmm. Also you seem very like no bullshit, which I love.
Thank you. Yeah, that is true. That is something that I think is funny because some people don't know. I think some people think, oh, she sounds like I'm going to be funny about this, but I always say that I sound like a Valley girl. And because I have a very high-pitched voice, which is fine. And when I'm, a younger woman sounding like that, some people are like, Taylor's so adorable. And it's like, no, I am very mean sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I am very no bullshit. I will be honest about things. I'm tactful about it, but I'm not a person that I'm not a person that really understands the benefit of not communicating. I'm a communicator. Right. I will tell you, hey, this isn't good. We got to figure something else out. Let's figure it out, but I don't think this is good. I'm not somebody that's going to sit in that or wants to sit in that or wants to see other people sit in that. That's really the other thing about it when you have like a bunch of people that's happening with. So yeah, thank you. I'm glad that's seen.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because like that is something that, we're kind of trained to think less of women who have like ultra girly, I guess, sounding voices. And so you have to train yourself to not think that they're like Valley girlish, which is obnoxious as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. Absolutely.
So you mentioned to me that you did your bachelor's thesis on healthy escapism, and I thought that would be a super great topic to talk about on Fandom and Wellness. Because on the show and on panels and stuff, we've talked about how difficult it is to like toe the line between healthy and unhealthy escapism in fandom, especially for me personally, which I'll expand on. But yeah, so I'm glad we can talk about this.
Good. Me too.
How do you use escapism in your life, whether it's healthy or unhealthy?
I would say definitely fan fiction, because we were talking about that before. Yes. I would also say that I love to unwind with television in general. People will often comment to me, wow, you know a lot about TV, you must watch a lot of it. And it's like, I guess so. I like to know what's happening, and I'm very interested in certain shows. I guess just participating in fandom as well, which... I mean, if there are other people involved, that you can go somewhere and go to convention and associate with other fans that are not toxic fans, that's a really positive experience. So I would say that's something that I've been going to conventions for over 10 years now, and in a social way. So I've done that, and I consider that part of under that umbrella for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Do you think there are any like unhealthy ways that you consume fandom?
I think this is the tricky part. I would say this, but clinically that's not true, so I can say this. When I was seriously, when I was a teenager, that was when I was going through a lot of like traumatic stuff. One of my family members is an alcoholic, still is, and they were violent and emotionally abusive, and again, everybody, I am okay. I go to therapy and I understand everything that happened. We're all good therapy over here. Yeah. So when I talk about this, don't be alarmed. But I would write a lot of fanfic. Like, that was the most output I think I was ever producing of fanfiction at once, was when I was probably about 14 to 18 years old.
Right.
So that's I considered that at the time shameful because I knew I would read it. I would read it back and I would know why I was writing these things, stuff like that. But as I got older and more educated in my field and even like have discussed this openly with other mental health professionals, that was actually like the best thing I could have done for myself at the time.
Right.
So I guess it's kind of a weird perception thing. That's sort of a non-answer, but it's right. A challenging our thinking answer of sometimes the things we think are unhealthy because they seem not right or shameful are actually like a normal expression of our emotions.
So like writing poetry, for example, even if it's like super depressing.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's a super healthy way to actually explore what's going on with you in a safe way too, because a lot of the time you can't express those things to other people. And that, for some reason, it may be real or not, but it's most likely real. Like, again, safe situations, especially when you're a minor, you don't know where to go. That's really...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I found, like, all my, like, like, poetry books that we had to write, like, in English class when I was, like, 14, and they are very suicidal. And I was like, is it healthy or unhealthy?
I'm sorry. But that's like a good thing to look back on and say, hey, I understand where I was and where I am now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you guys ready for my thesis on fanfiction?
Yeah.
Because I'm about to read it to you right now. So, I would say that fanfiction was a big part, teenage years, man, they are rough.
They are.
As I just stated.
It seems like they were for all of us. But yeah, I was super anxious, super depressed in high school, and I would stay up till like 3 a.m. reading actually, right? Because it is escapism, because you're escaping into another world, and sometimes it's like the same world, and sometimes it's like even the same situation but written like 300 different times.
Yep, that's
in different ways. Which, you know what? It's my favorite like scenario. Why wouldn't I read it?
Right.
Like 300 times. But that meant I didn't sleep. That meant I didn't socialize that much. But like, at the same time, would I've done that anyway without it, So it's like, you think about whether it was actually helping you cope with your mental health or not. But, fanfiction, I think, is interesting because it allows you to write about characters you love, but also kind of there's like self-inserts in stories, but then there's like self-inserts that are more subtle where you just put the characteristics of yourself in a character and not necessarily your actual self, which I mean, I'm sure we still do, but I think fanfiction is so interesting in that way because it's very complex and it's not black and white the way people kind of use fanfiction to understand themselves, understand sexuality, understand any kind of life scenario. And I just think that, and like, I think that it's not like a bad or good thing, I would say. I think it's just a part of my life, you know what I mean? And it was a way...
Right.
Yeah, it was just a way I used to cope and still do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know whether that counts as unhealthy or healthy, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I read that there's like, I'm sure that there's more than this, but I read that there's like 2 forms of escapism, like self-suppression or self-expansion.
Yeah.
Do you know more about this, Taylor? I assume you do.
I do.
So it sounds like kind of like what you're describing, like the feeling of like for example, like an unhealthy way that I would cope is like to like aimlessly like scroll on social media, which I guess would be like self-suppression, like to just like try to like escape whatever feelings you're having right now.
Yeah, I would say if there's no growth, that's probably a good way of thinking about that, which is a weird, I guess maybe that's hard to like identify within the spectrum of what we're talking about. But if you're going to try to sit with your emotions and process them through this, that is healthy. So fan fiction, I find, and especially in the past, but even now sometimes, and what you were saying, Jenny, for sure, is like a processing thing. You're processing.
Right.
So writing that like fan fiction that I was embarrassed about was the only way I could process what had like happened to me in all these different ways. And reading it through and like having emotions because of it. It's the same reason why people watch sad movies when they're like, oh, I want to cry and I can't, so let me watch a sad movie. Right. Yeah. That's actually healthy because you're trying to get that emotion out of you. You're trying to actually say, this is inside of me. I'm identifying it. Let me actually like process it through this way of doing something that isn't going to hurt me or anyone else by reading a thing or watching a sad movie or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's
so funny because whenever my dog like is injured or whatever, has to like be at the vet overnight or something, I watch Jurassic Bark on repeat, which is the Futurama episode where Fry's dog is like recovered and then dies.
Oh no!
Which is like the saddest episode. And I'm like, well, I guess I watch it because I hate myself and I want to cry. And in my head, I'm like, oh, that's unhealthy. But you're saying that that's actually not unhealthy.
Right. That's you processing. You're like, okay, I need to process my emotion. This is how I can do this. This is how my brain understands how to do this. Absolutely. That is not unhealthy to try to seek an emotional outlet that's not going to hurt you or someone else. Absolutely not.
Right. Because it's a fake. It's not a real character.
Absolutely. It's a TV show.
So there's no actual emotional like toll that like you will feel forever or whatever because it's not real.
Right.
Can you tell me what emotional intelligence is and what it has to do with escapism?
Yes. So we actually are talking a little bit about emotional intelligence, in fact, right now, which is like identifying where you are as your interpersonally, like inside of yourself. So sometimes people are really, we are all blind to our emotions sometimes, or don't want to encounter them, or don't want to let them overtake us, right? Mm-hmm. So we push them away. Having a more developed sense of emotional intelligence, which is also, have you ever heard the term self-actualization?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's like an old tenet of early modern psychology. It's learned like seeing the emotion in yourself, seeing it, understanding it, and being able to handle it within yourself in an appropriate manner. So we were talking kind of about like the fan fiction thing, right? If you identify, okay, I'm having a bad day, let me read some fan fiction because I just need to get some emotions out. That's actually just a demonstration of emotional intelligence. It's a very lofty term for a simple concept, to be honest. Yeah. But it's more challenging, I think, than like some people realize, or I think all of us realize, because of the thing we were talking before about encountering people that may not understand where you're coming from, and then you have like a reaction to them because you're thinking, oh, they don't like me, or oh, there's something wrong with me. But having emotional intelligence in that moment would be stepping back and saying, this isn't about me. This person is encountering something in themselves. Let me look at that before I, come to them and talk to them. So that's a better example of that, I guess. A more complex example.
Okay.
Yeah.
My problem is like one step further than what you just described, which is like I like see all that happening and I'll be like, oh, that person's mad at me, but then I'll be like, no, I know that this is all fake and they're not actually mad at me. I'm just telling myself in my head that they're mad at me.
But that's what it is. That's a great example of it.
But I still respond as if they're mad at me and still get upset.
That's okay, but having awareness of that is like the first step.
Not necessarily to them, just to myself.
There. Okay. Oh, goodness.
But I know it's all in my head, so it's
yeah, again, having that awareness at all is like a good step, because some people that's not happening, and that's okay. We gotta meet people where they are. That's kind of it.
Yeah, and handling your mental health is like a journey that never ends, basically, right?
Yes. Yeah, I've met a lot of people who have been like, oh, I've like done a lot of like self actualization. And I'm like, okay, that's like a forever process. It's not like a process that stops. Like,
no, it's not. I think, like taking a self-inventory and things like that, some people don't do that, but you can definitely overdo that, which I would caution against.
I live in my head, so.
Yep. A lot of, like, we were talking about having anxiety, you can definitely overdo checking yourself and thinking that you did something, and that's when, like, reality checking, where that comes in. That's a good method to do. But sometimes if you don't want to do it, you could just do whatever you want.
Okay.
I am not here to tell people, hey, do this thing when you do this. It's far be it from me to do that. Just be aware of when you're too critical of yourself is my point.
Mm-hmm.
So every day checking. For me and Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I do it every day. Let me tell you, it's not good sometimes. Sometimes it's definitely more hurtful than it is helpful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what are some examples of healthy escapism through modern fandom history?
So I was excited to talk about this because some of our favorite people in fandom, like overarching fandom, have talked about this. So Tolkien was one of them, which I find really cool because I did write about him in my thesis. When I did my thesis, I kind of opened it with his attitudes on escapism, and of course he wrote a lot of fantasy, and he wrote, everything that we know, this incredibly complex world that he dove into as an individual, as a writer. And the funniest part about him was that when he talked about his version of escapism, he talked about how it was fantastical and wonderful and you wanted to be in it, but there also was like this element of unease to it. So like he called it horror, but it's more of like something not right. And he included that so people wouldn't get lost in it, which I've always thought was very funny. Tolkien was also like a little bit like of a philosopher. He was religious. I don't know if you know like a ton about him, but he was like a very Christian person in certain ways, and then veered the other direction, but is very like has a lot of philosophical pillars to his thought process, which is interesting. If you're interested in that, go look it up because he's like a cool dude. But yeah, so he wanted people to find escapism in his works, but he didn't want people to go too far into them, which is funny to me because that's what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And then, Freud talks about it. He said it was essential, which we write off a lot of Freud because some of his stuff was trash and whatever. But we wouldn't have certain things like transference, which is a real thing in the psychology and mental health community, which is if there was like attachment theory and stuff like that. I'm not going to go crazy into this stuff because I don't want to bore anybody, but it's when you have
it's not boring.
Transference happens between, counselors and clients. I could talk about all these things. We could branch off into a million different directions about this. He's the one who wrote that down and said this is actually that will happen, countertransference, which can be really painful for the client who's going to seek mental health services. Those came from Freud, so we can't forget about those actual real things, but then he also said a lot of silly things that, whatever. One of my really good friends who is, he's getting his PhD in counseling right now, he and I have arguments about Freud a lot, so he'll be happy that I brought that up on this podcast.
Hello, friend.
Yeah, his name is Ben. Hi, Ben.
My husband's name is Ben, so hi, my Ben as well.
They're like, hello.
Who loves Lord of the Rings, by the way.
That's awesome.
And him and his best friend send each other Lord of the Rings memes literally every single day.
Wow.
Oh my god.
What a nerd.
I know, right? Yeah. Oh my god.
It's almost like I chose someone like myself to marry.
Right. It's almost like you chose a great partner to be with. Great.
Yeah. So also Harry Potter would be a good example, right? Mm-hmm. Because, like, people,
Exactly.
you know, like, they're pretty obsessed with, like, thinking they're actually in Hogwarts houses.
Yeah, which is, okay, I love talking about Harry Potter as an example of this because everyone I think I've ever talked to and correct me with you guys if I'm wrong about this, or a lot of people I've talked about using like fan fiction as like a healthy escapism outlet for healthy escapism always point to Harry Potter fan fiction.
I know I wasn't part of that, but I know so many people who were.
Me too. I was one of them.
Yeah, but like even like people who aren't really into fan fiction, like they'll like Harry Potter fan fiction. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I love, like, I mean, like, I didn't read it until I was an adult, so it's a little bit different than when you read it as a kid and you can, like, imagine yourself, like, actually, like, I can't wait for my letter, like, to go to Hogwarts. Like, you know, you're not going to get a letter and life kind of sucks when you're an adult. But, like,
so
but I love, like, you know, the idea that, like, we all kind of fit into a different Hogwarts house or two.
And it's very good fantasy for the fact that it's so open world. And I say that because there are a lot of other fantasy like books in the genre that have too many rules about them where you can't. I think that's why people are attracted to Harry Potter. I've thought a lot about this before.
I really want to start a Harry Potter podcast, so
that'd be so cool. You could have everyone on it, but it's like so open world that anybody fits there. That's absolutely true. And she wrote it in that way because it wasn't even about this intense. Like, yes, she does world building. It's a rich story for that, but it's really not about the world itself, which, let's use Tolkien because we were just talking about him. Yeah, a lot of his stuff is about like the actual world. It's not just about those characters. So when you have that sort of difference in the story and how you lay the story out, you're gonna have the different way, like a different way of accessibility, like how people approach the stories and say, I fit here, I don't. That's just it. Right. Which I get that, like, that's why I understand totally why people love Harry Potter so much, because it is really open for everyone. Yeah.
And what's your house?
I'm a Ravenclaw.
It's funny because I could put I would put you in anything other than Slytherin.
Thanks. My husband's a Slytherin, but
my husband's Slytherin as well.
Yep, but I always tell him he's the good Slytherin, like the Slytherin 2.0, the new Slytherins that are just like smart and strategic and not like jerks, you know. So there you go. Oh yeah, that's what I mean. That's what cunning is. It's strategy. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I think another thing we can talk about in terms of kind of related to escapism is like parasocial relationships.
Yeah.
Right? Because we do form very strong connections with characters and actors.
Yeah.
But like, and I feel like it can become unhealthy because there are like points to which people are obsessed and it is not good.
Yeah, before I made like a jab at toxic fandom, when I say that term, I always think about that. What I mean when I say that is this thing, is like people who are taking it too far and it's kind of overstepping boundaries with that kind of thought process. Like supernatural fandom can be really bad for that. I'm sorry to call it out. I'm a fan of the show. I watched it when it was first on TV, like first episode, so I feel like I couldn't say that. But and people who are long-term fans, a lot of them have gone away from the active participation part of the fandom because of that kind of situation.
Yeah, I was in that fandom for a long time too.
Yep.
And there's quite the divide among people. You know who? That's a whole like that. You can go into the psychology of people who are fans of that TV show like intensely, I'm sure, but
that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I think any like parasocial relationship where the fan kind of feels this like ownership over the character is just like super toxic. Like as we've discussed before, like like fans who like refused to like accept that like Ariel couldn't be cast as like
oh my God.
a Black woman instead, like because they feel like they like it's essentially them feeling like they own the character. Like
it's gross. Like that.
Right.
I'm gonna say gross on that because it's like blatant racism. Sometimes it's people just not having good like social emotional awareness, like we were talking about before. But for this situation, that is not the issue. But yes,
right.
Yeah, I can. So I'll say gross in this way. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
We also are drawn to characters and feel connections to them, and are able to almost like understand why they are the way they are, and then understand why we are the way we are, and why people around us are. So I think in that way it can be healthy to have these kind of relationships with characters. Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. I'm talking about Tony Stark.
That's great. Oh, real talk though. Again, I was talking about my dad before. He's like a great dude. Tony Stark's personality in the films is like what my dad is like in real life. Like, I'm not kidding you.
Oh, really?
Yes. Oh, yes. And so when he died, I was like, my dad is dead. Like, that's the emotional reaction I had.
Yeah.
That's not like a thought process I'd ever had before. Except sitting there in that theater. Also, it didn't help that, like, his daughter's on screen with him. It was, like, building up, like, horrible, like, weird emotion that came out of nowhere for no reason. And I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this?
So is this healthy or unhealthy?
I would say it's healthy, but it's just sort of blindsided me. It was very funny.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in, Logan.
Oh, God.
You guys... I didn't expect to cry so much.
Oh, God.
But, like, I don't see him as a father figure.
No.
But he is a father figure in the movie.
Right.
And I think my dad had just passed recently.
Oh, God.
So, like, I was just crying, like, until, for, like a long time even after the movie ended. It was so intense. But it was a good thing to do to, like, let out that emotion, for sure. You mentioned, is there anything else we want to say about escapism and how we can express it and perform it in a healthy way?
I would definitely say don't hurt other people with it. That's the most blatant answer I can give to that. If you're hurting someone else, and that includes like ignoring your friends or ignoring your partner or anyone else who's close to you in your life. If somebody comes to you and says, you know, I'm really feeling like you haven't been with me or haven't spent time with me, listen to that for sure. And don't avoid doing basic tasks because of it. Like, it's very hard. It's very challenging sometimes to, you know, get up, eat, take a shower. These are all actual, you know, barriers when people are experiencing depression in their lives, for sure. So I'm not saying, like, easily just do this. Absolutely not. But be aware of it. Be aware that that's something you're not doing because you're sitting maybe in watching your favorite TV show or reading something or doing that. But if it's because you're actually trying to actively process something, which I think most people can tell in some way when they're trying to process an emotion. Even if it's not conscious, it is like the joke that everyone makes in you know, about movies. Like, oh, I'm going to watch this movie so I can cry tonight. Like, that's a statement that would be indicative of that. It's not bad. It's just something you can recognize and say, you know what? I had a really bad day or this bad thing happened to me. I'm right. Let me just sit with this. Let me have this emotion. Let it come. And then you can move on.
So then this isn't fandom related, but just talking about, like, you were bringing up, like, symptoms of depression. So then is suicidal ideation a form of unhealthy escapism, essentially?
Oh, yes, I would say so. I would say that's not even, like, an escapism thing at all. I would hesitate to say that. Because a lot of times suicidal ideation is, like, a byproduct of, like, intrusive thoughts, which has nothing to do with really, intrusive thoughts are like the negative brain reaction, right? They're not like, we get some sort of positive chemical feedback from most things we find in escapism can be a bunch of different things. There's actual like chemical feedback in your brain that happens when you do something that triggers that kind of like high emotionally good thing that you're doing, right? That's not like intrusive thoughts definitely don't do that. So I would say that they're very separated in my opinion. But yes, if you're going to ask that question, definitely unhealthy for sure. Yes. Yes.
I mean, not to be too like emotional or anything, but no, I mean, like when I have experienced suicidal ideation, like I actually have it. I had like pleasant thoughts because of it, because like like the idea of it happening like was good to me in that moment.
And see, I would say that's like
so it's like complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated because probably chemically that's not what was going on necessarily. Like, there's a lot, again, I won't get into the crazy papers and all that nonsense, but there's been like a lot of research done now through like in neurology circles and psychology circles that have done studies on like what our brain looks like in certain ways when certain things, stimulus is introduced. So this is like, you, like in the moment, yes, you are probably feeling great about it. You might not have been, your brain chemistry might not have, but that's a different thing. You're not going to feel that. That's not necessarily true. So yeah, you're right. That's probably, that what you're saying is real, and it is a complex thing. But yes, I
think it's one of the hardest things for people to understand, I guess, who don't experience that, is that like for people who do feel suicidal ideation, like it, like you feel depressed, but then once you have those thoughts, like they almost relax you, I guess, which is like it's, I mean, like it sucks, but like it's, I don't know.
No, I mean, that's again something that I've heard from like adolescents before, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very frightening for people, for sure.
Yeah, well, because it's definitely very frightening that like that thoughts like that would end up feeling positive in your head when you know that they are definitely not positive.
Right.
I think part of it is that there is the ideation that I feel like I don't want to go like so into it that we start actually.
I know.
Talking
that's why I'm being a little hesitant, because I'm like, I don't know.
The ideation is the stopping of suffering, but it is the stopping of everything else too.
Correct.
Including including joy, including just any other feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course there might be some, of course you want to stop anxiety, but suicide is not the way.
Yeah, obviously not. I'm really glad that I didn't end up suiciding. It's just that it's just like an interesting, depressing thing to think about, because it, like during suicidal ideation, sometimes your brain feels almost euphoric because it's like you're like thinking about like, I guess, completing this goal basically.
Right.
I wonder if it's that like you feel like, well, you're probably not going to do it, so it's okay to think that.
It's like fantasy fulfillment. That's what like Jenny was starting to say. Yeah, that's absolutely something that, which is why like under the umbrella like of intrusive thoughts, right? That can be something that's like not necessarily as negative as you would think it would be, or like what we're talking about here. But yeah, most a suicidal ideation is like fantastical in nature. I don't want to say that because it makes it seem underplayed, but it's not a reality thing. It's not I'm actually like living in the reality of me hurting myself. It is like thinking about, right.
Yeah, so basically like I have had a very hard time explaining to people that like just because I have suicidal ideation, it doesn't mean I'm suicidal, because it's almost like, I guess the reason why I asked if it's a form of escapism is because like I almost feel as if thinking about it kept me from doing it.
Yeah.
But that's a really thin line, I feel like.
I understand that it's a thin line, but it's a thin line that a lot of people do walk, and the people who walk it a lot of times do know that is how they feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I've walked that line for 30 years.
I will also point out that I think we give a lot of weight understandably, but almost like too reactionarily to the fact that people have suicidal ideation. So that's actually right now something that is changing in the mental health community. But when I was being put into it, it was just changing, and now I'm starting to see it change quite radically in a good way, which is that it happens. We have to talk about that it happened.
Yes,
which before,
exactly.
it was a cautionary thing, like, if this is happening, this must be reacted to right away. And that's not the way, that's not appropriate. We should not be doing that, and it should be explored and discussed, which is, it goes hand in hand with what you're saying, that this is more of a reality for a lot more people than previously thought about or discussed. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a much more normal thing than people realize, maybe. And so, like, jumping to the conclusion of you need to be committed or something for having those thoughts is pretty dangerous, in my opinion, because then it makes the person not want to, like, tell people about those thoughts.
Right. Yeah,
which is
that's absolutely
how
true.
People end up dead.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're right.
So
sorry that this conversation became such a bummer.
I like challenging myself.
I know, sorry. It's just like something I was thinking about.
It's fine.
No, it's definitely a good thing to discuss. So I also want, you mentioned that you had outlets before. I just want to know what your personal outlets are.
So my personal outlets for doing this are just different things, I guess. I mean, working, which is, like, awful, because I'm always an action person. So if I think there's something, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do something about it, which can be good and can be bad, but it's good that not to have to stew over things for a long time, but bad because you can, like, kind of lose yourself in it. But I would say writing, I like writing a lot anyway. I used to want to be an artist when I was very young, and then I was told I was bad at it, so I stopped, and I wrote a lot. Aww. And I still write a lot, and writing has always been a good way for me to express myself. Now I've come back to doing art and graphic design. I've been doing graphic design for quite a long time now, but so that's something that's kind of never left me, and I do know that actually helps me understand where I am coming from, even if it's something I'm not consciously thinking about. And I would say interacting with people in fandom through conventions and through cosplay.
And I totally forgot to mention when we were talking about escapism, I think a good way to make it healthy is to make it a group activity at conventions and stuff.
Yeah.
Because you can watch TV shows with friends and loved ones. You can talk about them. You can be in fanfiction writing communities. You can do a lot of things that allow you to grow and, like, help you help you communicate with other people. And basically. Yeah,
you're right.
I think that's why I brought up Harry Potter, because it's like, it seems like such a communal thing.
Yeah, it is. It's like I was talking about before, it's very open to people and accessible to people, so people are very attracted to it for a good reason.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do we have anything else to say about all of this?
I don't know if maybe I should say something like in a summary. I don't know. I guess but the whole thing is, don't be ashamed of what you do because you need to process your emotions. That would be the message that I would say to people. Mm-hmm. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're listening to the people who you trust around you, if that is involved, if you're so involved in that you're not living your life. But definitely don't be ashamed of seeking these things out that maybe even help you grow. Like you were talking about finding your community. I definitely think I learn things from other people when I do cosplay in these groups, or challenge myself to, join a group of cosplayers that are like mega talented, things like that. Mm-hmm. Definitely don't think that what you're doing is again, if it's healthy, if you're not hurting yourself or anyone else, you know, it's okay to process your emotions in ways that maybe like pop culture, other people are like, oh, that's weird. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Fuck you, Bill Maher.
Yeah. Like, screw that. Oh my God.
I mean, that's excellent. You brought up cosplay a bunch of times, so just real fast, what's your favorite current cosplay that you're doing?
Currently, probably Nadja from What We Do in the Shadows. I think
yes.
I think I'm actually going to do a different costume of hers for Halloween. Because I already have the wig and everything like that. And I've been looking at a few photos online lately. And they're doing this costume parade festival thing at Navy Pier in Chicago over here. So I feel like that's going to be my goal, to like show up there and this crazy thing, and people will be like, what is happening? So
that's awesome.
Probably that. Mm-hmm.
So then, where can we find you on social media?
I am primarily on Instagram. You can find me at They Seek Her there. Like the Scarlet, it's a reference to the Scarlet Pimpernel. That's a little rhyme that they do in the book, and it's that's on Instagram. You can also find me on Twitter, if you like Twitter better, at Chicago Chic Geek, and on Facebook as myself, Taylor Deatherage. And you can find Logan Arch on Instagram as well if you like pop culture stuff, especially gaming, 90s kind of things. If you really like Pokemon, you will probably like us, because we're weird about Pokemon over there. At Logan Arch Chicago, and you can find the website loganarchchicago.com. Oh, I also have a website where you can read my blog. That might be important. I always forget to tell people that. TheySeekHerThere.com. It's in the web link area on my Instagram anyway, so you'll see it if you go there.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks so much for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the easiest way to help support our podcast. This week's review comes from Jay Putnam. They say, it's awesome hearing real fans talk about real things with sometimes a different perspective. It feels fresh and unpretentious. Just some friends having a good time talking about pop culture that I like in my ears. Sorry, that sounds funny. How can you go wrong with that?
If you want to chat with us about the episode, our social medias are Fandom and Wellness on Instagram, Fandom and Wellness on Facebook, and Fandom Wellness on Twitter.
You can also find Arkita at Classy Rebel Design, Danielle at Little Petal, and me at The Box of Shadows, all on Instagram. And if you want bonus content, you can join our fandom family at patreon.com/fandomwellness for Patreon-exclusive geek sessions.
And remember, be kind and take no shit.
Yay! Woo! We did it.